All right, so we're live, and
Oh, we are?
yeah, we are. Welcome to HOD Live. We are here in the HOD Live. It's all right, it's perfectly fine. We're here in the HOD Live studio, and I have my two lovely co-hosts, both matching in their HOD Live sweatshirts. It's been a while. Last week, we were not on the air on account of the fact that First Lady, myself, and Master Roscoe were getting back from Chicago to see Northwestern, and there was a bit of a weather outbreak that whenever the tornado sirens sound, First Lady likes to be held very closely, and she gets
Ain't nothing wrong with it, Flo High.
She gets very frightened. So that's what was going on with that. And then the Friday before, our very talented and lovely Miss Courtney Renee Johnson, as I explained before, Elon Musk came to her job and came to the studio, and that's right. But she was with a singles event, and she was gone, and
She was a speaker for that event.
she
actually,
was at the
That
that's
was the
right.
one
She was a
before
speaker
last,
for that.
yeah.
Absolutely.
She was.
And so we are all, the gang is all here, as they
Yes.
say.
Yes.
Well, tonight we have a very interesting topic. And by the way, if you are watching, please share and like the broadcast on whatever streaming service you're watching. I think we have more viewers on YouTube typically than Facebook, but wherever you're at, Facebook, YouTube, then like and share. The last time we met, when you were doing your singles conference, First Lady and I had a discussion about first ladies.
Making
and
or breaking ministries.
Absolutely. Making how first ladies can make or break a ministries. Did you?
I saw that.
What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it was very wonderful that was the topic of discussion, because a lot of times the viewpoint of a first lady is either, and I think you brought it up, either a co-pastor or overlooked, neglected, or what have
Right.
you. I'm grateful that's not the case here, and that our first lady has the liberty to be who she is and not fit into a mode of,
Amen.
some are just thrown over things to kind of just have something to do.
Right.
Right.
But she's very instrumental in the ministry. So many people have responded about how her demeanor is very pleasant and welcoming. And Here, Pastor. Yeah.
Now at home.
Pastor.
I can't speak to that,
No,
Pastor.
Bishop.
See, look at
Well,
this.
here at restaurants, I can attest, but at home, I cannot. I do not
at
know.
home.
She's
But it was a
reasonable.
very good. I think it was a very good discussion
It
to
was a good
put a
discussion.
highlight on that.
Yeah. And listen, you started saying there was two ways that a
First lady
can
can
impact, and we
tear
only
up a
got through
church.
one.
Yeah.
We didn't get to the second point because I think
The first
I went off on a
point
tangent,
was,
but we didn't
oh
go
yeah.
to the- we didn't get to the second
The
point.
first point was, what's up, Rach? What's up, Tati? The first point was that they can't see you.
I know.
She's
I
waving
don't know
at me.
why I did that. This routine.
Hey,
I'm
everybody.
That's not how phone works. Okay.
They're looking at.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But they're not looking at her phone. She waved at her phone.
wave at my
Wave
But
to the audience.
the second way, we talked about the first way a first lady can impact or negatively impact the church, and that is through the feeding and care of her husband, right, the pastor. And then the second way a first lady can negatively or positively impact the church is her dealing with the saints, which leads us into this topic we're going to deal with tonight. Are you an emotionally fragile person? And I thought that was a very, very good and meaningful topic. Let me start off with a compliment with you two young ladies. Both of you all are I don't know what the opposite of it is, but neither one of you two are emotionally fragile.
Amen.
That's good.
Amen.
Neither one of you all are
That
emotionally
wasn't
fragile.
always the case for me, so I thank you.
Yeah, you two have a very good emotional constitutions, and that's a very good thing, and it's good for just for your personal lives, but it's also good for church because believe it or not, the more people who have good emotional constitutions, the stabler the
Yes.
church becomes. Church instability is produced by the rampant instability among the people. If a core group of people are stable, then the church is
Yes.
stable. That makes sense.
Yes, sir.
So I want to start off with throw a few things out there. I want to get your feedback on kind of your commentary on some of this stuff. One is that emotional how many of you all know, or does two of you? How many? Both of you all, I would assume you know people who are emotionally fragile.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
Now, emotionally fragile people are the stereotype for emotionally fragile people would be the person who is constantly crying or sad or boo-hooing and things like that, the woe is me person. And that's typically what we think of when we think of someone's emotionally fragile. But that's just one type of emotionally fragile people. An emotionally fragile person can also be the person that's prone to outbursts, to violent reactions. I don't mean physical violence, but
Right.
because there too you're dealing with someone who cannot control their emotions.
Right.
One therapist I was looking at, not the one that I shared, said that emotionally fragile people create eggshells
Oh,
that other
yes.
people are forced to
Yes.
walk on.
Right.
Yes.
And we've
Right.
all been in a situation where there has been someone who is emotionally fragile and you kind of felt you had to watch how you deal with them and kid gloves for the sake, God forbid they explode. Have either
Right.
one of you had that experience, and what was it like?
Oh, definitely. It's a little bit when you're dealing with someone like that. I think it creates a superficial relationship, you know, because you have to be careful of everything you say to the person. And sometimes it could lead to kind of resentment on the person's part.
Good point.
You know, if I
Resentment
feel
on the part.
on the person who has to be the one to walk on
Yes,
eggshells
yes.
to appease the person who has
Yes.
the fragile
Right.
emotional intelligence, and it can be a little bit frustrating. Yeah, it's too much work and too much energy.
There
of
it
work.
is. There it is. I agree with everything that you're saying, and it fosters or disingenuine. You know what I mean?
Yes,
And it
yes.
makes you feel it's like, and then you got to get prepared because if you're
Right.
dealing with something, you can't really deal with what you're dealing with because they're a whole thing to deal with
Yes.
in and of themselves. So you either find yourself avoiding them or having to have a heart to heart, like, look,
Yes.
this is, and
Right.
that's something that's very that
It's
you
hard
gotta-
to do.
Yeah,
And-
when
and-
you're dealing with someone like that.
That's an excellent point too. And emotionally fragile people, I find, tend to hold the whole atmosphere hostage.
Yes.
Right.
In other
That's
words,
it,
you
right
know,
there.
you cannot, everyone, especially when that person is either the go-to person, the person, they're in each group, even in subgroups, there's an emotional thermostat.
Yeah.
And there's a person people kind of look to see. And
That's true.
sometimes it can always be, is this person okay? How are they doing?
Right.
And they soak up a lot of resources
Right.
trying to make you
Yes.
trying to make sure
Absolutely.
Susan or Ricky or whatever is okay with
Yes.
everything that's going around. And it can not only impede progress, but it also becomes very laborious and
Yes.
frustrating
Yes.
to be in a relationship with someone who is emotionally fragile. And we've been talking about before we came on the air, you and First Lady were talking about this being your year, Courtney.
Yes,
Absolutely. You're going to have a husband. I mean, I was going to say a husband and a man, but those two are going to be together in one, right?
He may be so much that
That's
you
right.
know,
A husband and a
hey.
man, a house. And so it's hard. It's very difficult for one of the things that I pray as all of these single ladies are looking for suitors is that the Holy Ghost box is
Yes.
checked, the financial independence box is checked, the thing, but also you want a man who is
Yes.
free from his mother's apron strings, free from his mom needing approval from parents and mothers and siblings and big mama and mama and me ma and all, you know what I'm saying?
You're
How we
right.
having
You're
big
absolutely
mama
right.
and
Yeah.
little pawpaw and big J and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So that person is not emotionally fragile because that's a sentence for a woman or a man to be in a relationship with someone
Absolutely.
who is emotionally fragile. It's almost like you have a child. Does that make sense?
Right, absolutely,
Oh
absolutely.
Lord, I think I'm sweating over here.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
But that is so true. It's talk about a drain and sucking the life out of something. But I think the main thing we need to look at outside of the fact of if they're Holy Ghost filled, if they're saved, if they're walking upright before God, if they're not emotionally available
That's a good
or
point.
emotionally mature, they're
Right.
not
Right.
eligible.
Right.
That's
And
good.
that's
Excellent.
something sometimes you
excellent
don't
point.
discover up
Right.
front. But if you've had experience in it, there are probably telltale signs
Right.
to let you know.
You know, that's an excellent point because this even counts in platonic relationships,
Yeah.
emotional availability, and making sure all of your friends are not emotionally fragile.
Right.
Because that's draining. And emotionally fragile people drain you because you always have to watch what you say to a
Always.
fault.
Right.
You have to be careful about sharing, praise reports or
Right.
what you're going
Yeah.
through because of how it may impact them.
Right.
And it wears down your happiness and your peace and your joy dealing with people who you are always on guard, and the slightest thing can either set them off anger or set them off in sadness and fear. Rachel says, an emotionally fragile person can be draining. Everything can be a crisis. True. When it's not,
true.
it can be hostile. So true.
Yes.
And so, but here's the thing though. Part of that, while we're projecting outward, to other people that may be emotionally fragile, this is looking inward because, it's easy to point fingers and say,
Right,
this
right.
person is emotionally fragile, but how much fragility are we
within you.
walking around in? Let me read something that I want to get your take on this. It says, this is another thought given by a commentator. You don't always have to feel your feelings. This therapist says that emotion, especially when your feelings come out in inappropriate settings, when they are overreactions, you don't always have to feel what you're feeling, meaning that when you have a feeling, be it sadness, be it anger, that does not have to be something that you sit with and you consume.
Right.
Because sometimes the feelings we have, we can put too much focus on them,
Yes.
and then they take on a life of their
true.
own. She goes on to say that sometimes we judge ourselves by the emotions we're having. Meaning that sometimes, all of us nowadays, men and women, have this idea of, I want to be seen as strong, independent, unfazed by anything.
Yeah.
And in the slightest hint that something is phasing us or disturbing us, we look at that as that means I'm a weak person. Like in church sometimes, no one ever wants to admit that they're worried about anything.
Right.
No one ever wants to
Right.
admit that they're concerned about anything or they're afraid of anything because they don't want that label
Right.
of being worried. And so that's feeling your feelings. Do you find that being an issue in your own lives? Have you ever gone through that? Have you ever been in your head in terms of with feelings?
No, I agree with what the therapist is saying. To an extent, you don't have to wear your, if I'm hearing you correctly, you don't have to wear your feelings on your sleeve, but it should be okay to admit that you are feeling a certain way. We should not have to, we should not have to walk
But do
around-
we feel too much? Is there too much of a focus on feelings? Has the pendulum swayed too far from toxic masculinity now to this?
toxic positivity?
Yes,
which is the new thing.
and everything,
Toxic positivity.
every feeling is affirmed. Every feeling needs to be
Yeah.
processed.
Right. I think we sometimes can kind of overkill with that. Wanting people to process every feeling they're
Yeah.
feeling. Some things can just be. Sometimes we make more of an issue out of something than it really is. And therapy, or it seems like in the mental health space, they want to put a label on everything.
That's true.
And so I think that sometimes it could be overcome. I don't think it's anything wrong with having a healthy relationship with your feelings.
That's a good. I like it.
Yeah.
Courtney,
I
let me
like
ask
how
you this
how
question.
you worded that.
How do you determine for yourself the difference between an unreasonable feeling or emotion versus you're how old now?
41.
41. Huh?
I don't know why I went low. Just came out
All right,
like
41.
That's
All right.
still young.
She's getting sleepy. All right. We about to start talking about crime, but. So you're 41 years old. Hopefully you've
Yes.
had the
Yeah.
time in life and where you've begin to understand Courtney.
Yes.
Because no one else understands you, Courtney. You are an enigma. You're a mystery. We still don't get you. We have no idea
And I'm
who
okay
you
with
are.
that.
Okay. We see glimpses of you, but no one has unraveled
Yeah.
the mystery that is Courtney,
it's a
right?
mystery.
So, but how do you determine within you? Because all of us have unreasonable emotions. Would you
Yes.
say that?
Yes.
All of us do. How do you determine which emotions are reasonable or unreasonable, or which emotions you're going through are detrimental or not? As a
Well,
way to help people, I think that's a good
as
thing.
a way to
Yes.
help. For me, what I do is I try to, if I'm not overly emotional in any moment, I try to think through to process where it's stemming from. If something is not currently happening in life that would cause this natural reaction, then I kind of figure, okay, this isn't much to put stock into. But I still want to know where it came from because it popped up from somewhere.
Right.
But if it's something that's happening, what I would try to do is if it's a natural response to something, I would be trying to cut it off because I don't like to feel uncomfortable or try to deal with the unraveling of raw feelings and all that kind of stuff. But when I realized, okay, this just happened, take example, death. You're going to feel certain things.
Sure,
with that.
death, right.
So to try to say, oh, I'm not gonna cry, or I'm not hurt, or I'm not like making excuses to not have an emotional response to it, I don't do that anymore. Because that is a natural, there should be a natural response.
Right.
Everybody's won't be the same at every given time.
But even with death, though, I've seen people take it to an extreme.
It can go to an extreme,
And
yes.
there comes a time where mourning will continue, but the mourning and the grief, whether or not it is consuming you to a point of being unhealthy. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you kind of, if something is rational or if there's a reason connected to that, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes, that's usually how I gauge it for myself, because I do know, and especially in one of the classes that we had, there is a natural response to thing, but if it goes on for long periods of time, or it's a new season and you're still feeling like
Stuck
this
on
raw
that.
emotion about it, then that's not normal. That's not rational. That's something that you have to work out.
I was in Walmart today, and I was in the self checkout, so I was getting all my stuff, and while you bag it up, so I had a basket, so I bagged up all my stuff and put it in the basket. And there's only a bag of stuff, one bag, and so one of the ladies that worked at Walmart came up and says, "While my stuff is in the bag, can I have this cart?" I said, "What do you mean? Can you have this cart?" She said, "I want to use this cart to put returns in, and my stuff is actually in the cart." Wow. And I said, "No." First, I thought she was saying, "I'll take the cart and put it back for you."
Right.
So I said, "No, I'm fine." She said, "No, I would like to have this cart. I want to put it used for returns." So I'm having this discussion with myself. One thing, I only have one bag, so I can easily carry it out, right?
Yeah.
On the second, I'm thinking, this is my cart. I got this
I'm
cart.
using it.
Yeah, I'm using this cart.
Yeah.
So, and then I was upset and offended that she would come in the middle of this process where the customer of the cart asked me to take my bags out of the cart so she could have a cart for return. Right. So it offended me that, and so part of me thought about just taking the cart with his one little bag in it all the way out to the car just so she can, so, how dare you interrupt my Walmart experience, by asking for this cart and interrupting that. So part of me was upset with this whole exchange. And then the other part of me knew that this lady, and I don't want this to come across as sounding bad, but I knew she was a foreigner, so maybe things are different or were different. Sometimes, foreigners, their culture can be a little bit different. They can sometimes it's just the difference.
Yes. Yeah.
So what do you think I did, First Lady?
I don't think you should have been in Walmart.
No, what do you think? Oh my gosh.
Why were you in Walmart?
Because the Ventures is closed and Grandpa Pigeons is no longer around.
That's true.
Right.
I think you handled that.
No, what do you think I did?
Oh, what I think you did, well, knowing you as I do, I think you gave her the cart.
Okay. What do you think I did?
I think you left the store. I don't know if you gave her the cart.
I mean, of course I left the store. I told you no one understands you, Courtney. So what do you think I did?
I think you did the rational thing and
What's that?
just let her have the cart.
What would you have done?
I probably would have, I'm not emotionally mature sometimes. I'm kind of childish and petty. I probably would have taken my cart and left the store with my cart. She would have had to go she would have had to go get another one.
Breaking news. First Lady has come to a full realization and revelation that she is emotionally immature and petty. Everybody, like, we've been waiting for this
I have my
breakthrough.
moments when I can be.
I'm sorry, First Lady. What did you say?
I probably would have
Taking the cart. What would you have done?
I would have left it.
I
Cart.
would have left the cart there. Now, I don't know if I would have just said, here you go. I probably would have just blinked a little bit and just left the cart there.
I thought about, yes, ma'am.
And also, too, because I think as an employee, she's an employee of the store. Why are you trying to inconvenience the customer?
It was wrong.
It was
Yeah.
wrong.
She
so I
shouldn't,
think
right.
for that standpoint,
And I thought about making a stand
Yeah.
Yeah.
for all of the black people down through generations
That's
who got their cart taken because of the color of their skin, not the content of their character.
That's
So
right.
I really
That's
thought
right.
about making a stand on this cart. But here's my thinking, and commenters comment online, what would you have done? Take the cart or leave the cart? That's all you had to put in the comments. But here's what I thought. I came to the two things. I came to the conclusion that I'm investing too much of my mental faculties
that's true.
in this cart thing.
Right.
So if I take the cart out, then it's almost like me indulging kind of with ice cream into this dessert of, man, I showed her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
I hope she's back there thinking, you know, I'll never do that again. And he sure showed me, and he put me in my place. Look at him go with that cart. Who is the man?
That won't risk his life for the brother,
Right.
man.
Pastor.
Can you dig it?
Right. So I said I'm putting too much emotion. So I said, okay,
Yeah.
fine, I'll take. And then she, you know, she needed the cart. She could have got her own cart. So I just grabbed my bag and left the cart.
You did the right thing,
Yeah.
and both of us.
But
guessed
here's the
that
thing:
was how you
either
handled
one of
that.
those would have been the right thing. It would have been wrong to take the cart.
It
But
would
it's
have been.
about
It
what's the
would've been
right
wrong
thing
for me
for
because
you.
I would have
Yeah.
been doing it with a petty mindset. Like
I don't
would've
know
been-
if it would have been wrong.
Right.
I
I would
don't-
have been like, she has to go get another cart. She's the employee.
Uh-huh,
Don't inconvenience me. I'm walking this cart out to my car. and
Well,
and
see,
that's
that the thing I don't like is where the placement of the carts on the lot. So it probably would have been doing me a favor to just leave it there.
right.
But I get exactly what you're saying, investing too much time. This is what I would have been thinking, walking to the car. Like,
Right,
it's not that
right.
big a deal. It doesn't deserve all of this attention or
Exactly.
that I'm giving it. But in the moment of it, it's like, okay,
I was
so
offended.
It's all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
people
Right.
around and I'm the one you pick.
To
But
get-
then it's that conscious side after, like, what if she was, I mean, like, I don't know if empathetic is the word, but were you thinking, well, maybe somebody's putting pressure on her to do
Ain't nobody
this or
putting no
do
pressure
this
on
or
her.
do
She
that.
she
She
just
was being
she ain't want to walk to.
She didn't want to walk and get a cart.
But here's the thing: I make that decision not for her sake.
right.
Yeah.
but for-
And not because it was quote unquote right, because either one of those things would have been right.
Yeah.
I'm on this wavelength right now where I'm trying my best to make good micro decisions
Yes.
every day.
Yes.
Right.
And
Understood.
micro decisions meaning how I invest my emotions.
Yeah.
Right.
And trying to
good.
retrain myself
Right.
to let stuff go, let stuff
Yes.
slide, not to take things personal, not to
Yeah,
take
right.
Yeah.
things
Makes sense.
offensively, even though they may be not necessarily right or appropriate, or they may, you know, cross the line, so to speak, simply because I don't want the type of emotional baggage.
Right. Right.
And
Makes sense.
at the end of the day, I don't want to walk around angry, upset, worn out, tired. In other words, I'm not trying to fight the every case of injustice everywhere I go, at
Absolutely.
Walmart, at the gas station,
Yeah.
on the road when people cut you off, because it becomes too draining.
It
and so
really does.
I'm not trying to be, and that's what I mean by emotional fragility, not just being the person that breaks down and cry. If I can easily affect your emotions, Courtney, or manipulate your emotions by what I say, by off snide comment,
Right.
then I control you.
Right.
And
Right.
and
Absolutely.
you are a weak person.
Right.
You're a weak person. Not I'm just saying this
Yes,
hypothetical.
yes.
If I can say something to that is really meaningless to knock you off your pedestal, that means you're a weak person.
Right.
Yeah. That's
And that's something that is more concerning than you showing everyone how tough you are. So,
Right.
you know, emotional fragility means, or not being fragile means that there is a vibranium force field between me and my emotions, where if you say something, first it has to check in with my head. If you say something to me, it's going to check in with my brain first. And my
Yeah.
brain's going to decide whether or not I need to invest
Pass it down.
all
Yeah.
of this stuff
Right.
in what you said. If not, then I'm just going to say, okay, she said that. I know how she meant, how she didn't mean, but I'm just going to let it go because I don't feel like, over the next 24 hours, letting Courtney live in my head.
Right.
God only knows what she would say if Courtney lives in
God only knows.
That's a scary thought. No,
that is very
but
scary.
I'm just using. I love you, Courtney.
Yes, sir.
But I don't want to give someone space to live in my head or my heart.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
How do you develop that though? Other than those how we all want that. How do we get to the point in the church, out of the church, where we are not so easily manipulated by wrong things that are done to us, by sometimes careless words, careless thoughts, careless whispers that come our way? How do we refrain from indulging in that?
You just make a conscious decision, like, not to allow certain things to put, or, you just make a conscious decision. I think I told a story once. One Sunday I left here, it was a day I had on this coral dress. And in that coral dress, everybody was speaking to me. I think I was just radiating this sunshine. And so men and women were just, oh, that's a pretty dress, or just complimenting me. And I was saying hi to everybody, and everybody was saying hi to me. And I walk out the store, and somebody was walking into the store, and I said, hello, how are you? And we made eye contact, so I know the person saw me. And they did not say anything, they didn't, And I just laughed to myself. I thought it was kind of funny. I was like, well, you have a blessed day too. And I made a choice not to let one person affect my mood or my interaction. I just saw something on Instagram yesterday, and this woman, I guess she worked at a front desk, and she asked somebody could she help them, and a person ignored her and went to the person at the desk with her. Well, it upset her so bad. She was outside in the parking lot just like upset by that. And I remember thinking, wow, you're going to let one person have that kind of time, attention, and energy. She was in the parking lot and posting online and she's angry about this. And I'm thinking, wow, get a grip. Like, don't let somebody have that kind of control over you.
Well,
so you have to make a conscious choice on how you're going to respond to everything.
But let me ask you this. A lot of times when those cases happens, it's because things have built up. And we can be dealing with being put in a place where, because there's a difference between, like in that cart situation, if you're doing something because you feel bullied into doing it, or you feel, strong-armed into doing it, that's not good either.
Right,
in order to have that, what you're saying, you have to make a conscious decision. I'm doing this I'm letting this insult go that Courtney just insulted me, right? So I'm letting this go, not because I'm afraid of Courtney.
Right.
Not because I don't want to ruffle her feathers. I'm letting this go because I'm making a conscious decision not to come back at her. Yes. Those are two different things. If she comes at me and I kind of cower or I let it slide because I'm afraid or because I'm fearful, or I'm afraid of conflict, which many people are.
Yes.
And I just let it go. Yes. That's going to fester. That's not the same as saying, I'm not afraid of Courtney. I know what she said was insulting. Right. I'm not going to gaslight myself and say, well, maybe there was something about that, or maybe I'm taking it wrong. Yeah. No, what she said was wrong. What she said was insulting, but I'm making a conscious decision not to engage. That's the only way you can leave this in a healthy way. Yes. This lady may have been in a situation where she has just been jumped on in terms of a dumping ground for a long time. Yeah. And then this thing happens with the desk, and it was like the boiling point for her.
I got you.
It could not, but what you're saying is valid.
I was going to say, I think it's twofold. It's how not always just how other people treat you, but how you view yourself and what you put out. I think a lot of times we have, if we grow and we mature and we get better, but we don't clean up messes that we've made, then some people's perception of us is still that immature one. Yes. And so they may interact with us based on that, and we can't. I think sometimes we'll look at it as they're wrong, how dare you, but that's the last encounter that they've had with you. And then also, again, back to yourself. How do you view yourself? Do you see value or worth in yourself?
Sure.
So self-care, and then what you're doing to other people. So I think it's both of those combined together.
That's good.
On what you allow in.
First, let me ask you this question. What makes you sad?
What makes me sad? That's a good question. Injustice.
Injustice.
The
Okay.
first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah, injustice. Seeing people mistreated. Especially, I really have a heart for people who are elderly and babies and children.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I see the mistreatment of people who really cannot maybe fend for themselves, that makes me sad, but it also makes me, I guess, upset, angry. You know, I don't like to see that. So I don't know if it's sad or anger.
But a little bit both.
A little
Courtney,
bit
what makes you
Yeah.
sad? And there is a method to this, man. What makes you sad?
Yeah. I would say hatred. So I just recently had an encounter with someone in the church, not our church, but just someone in the church. And everything that they were saying was just so hate-filled. At first it
Hate
was...
feel in terms of what? What do you mean?
I'm going to tell you, it was like a gripe with everybody. Initially, it was, can you believe this Trump administration? And da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then them foreigners coming over and they're da-da-da-da-da. And then these immigrants and they don't even speak. And I'm thinking,
Wow.
what just happened here? And so I'm saying, well, you know, the Bible tells us how we're supposed
welcome
to
the stranger.
interact with all these different groups of people. And you just have this about everybody as if they're somehow taking something from you. There and don't get me wrong, when I was younger around older women, it was always this kind of we're born here and we can't get a leg up, but these foreigners come in and they bring these not grocery stores, but convenience stores filled with liquor and da-da-da-da. But if they're given the opportunity to do those things, like what would be the difference?
But you're seeing that
Yes.
hatred, that venom makes you
The venom
Okay.
that people have toward other people, and it's not anything that has been directly. It's like they're regurgitating somebody else's anger.
I think you two are skimming the surface because
Okay.
you know that I get what you're saying, but that's kind of
Too broad, maybe.
too broad for
Or the
me.
loss of a loved one. I mean,
Well,
that's very, you know.
I think let me share mine, and maybe that will
Help.
What makes me sad is seeing sad people. What makes me sad is seeing people whose life is not going well, or who they believe life is not going well, or they are suffering in some way. Sometimes it's because of life. Sometimes it's because of their own fault.
Yeah.
Especially when people you want to do well. You know, seeing
Yeah.
things not work out in people's lives kind of does that. Seeing people suffer makes me sad or unhappy. Here's the reason I ask that. Whatever it is that makes you sad or angry, one thing we know for sure is that these things are being multiplied and magnified in this world. So here's the question. With all of these triggers for anger, for sadness, for whatever it is, how other than shutting the world out and trying to remove ourselves from situations, it's a question of how can we be around all of these sad triggers, anger triggers, and not be jaded, not develop this hard outer shell, not shrink back into I got mine, you know, they'll have to get
Yeah.
theirs. How do we stay emotionally healthy and things like that and still be around this stuff that's not going anywhere?
Yeah.
For me, count my blessings and focus on, you know, I don't want to go to the heavenlies, but I'm going to go to the heavenlies. You know, counting my blessings and realizing that even on my worst day, it's not as bad as it could be, and never losing sight of that. And just being grateful and thankful to God for what He's doing in my life. You know, I don't want to see anybody suffer, and that does bring sadness to see anybody, as I said, children or elderly. You know, but just really being thankful and grateful, and just focusing on, not focusing, but not to get so caught up on everything that's negative that's happening in the world and around me to the point where, it emotionally drains you. You have to just kind of refocus your attention. For me, sometimes too, I have to turn off the news. I have to take a break from social media. When I'm getting in my word and focusing on the goodness of the Lord, it really does help. And like I said, not to sound too or be in the heavenlies, but that is what helps me.
What about things when you're seeing this stuff, these triggers that both you say, the injustice and things like that? What about
And I
doing
pray for others too.
doing what you can
Yeah.
in those situations? What about also recognize your own limitations,
Right.
and accepting that? And people will say this sounds pessimistic, but accepting that this world and suffering are inseparable,
Part of life,
Right.
yeah.
and the limitation that there's only so much I can do for any given
That's
person
true.
at any
Yes.
given time.
Right.
And it's almost a switch that goes off in your head. You have to make the decision to be joy-filled, healthy,
absolutely.
positive,
Yeah.
regardless of all of the stuff that's coming at you.
I agree.
Stepping back to mean if you are in a place and no one values, and it's never like that because
Right, no.
that's in our head. But if you
Right.
think you're at a place, no one values you. Life is so
Yeah.
difficult, whatever. What's happening outside of you has to be different than what's going on inside
I
of you.
agree,
And I think that's the beginning of emotional strength. Whereas if what's happening outside of you always affects
Right.
what's happening inside of you, your dreams of being happy will never come to fruition because
True.
what's happening outside you is not going to get better. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
having that self-contained sense and not letting your emotions be so easily touched
Swayed, yeah.
and swayed,
Absolutely.
which
Right.
is a part of having a relationship, an intimate relationship with someone else. I don't mean intimate sexual,
Right.
close relationship. Because as you remember, we talked about giving people access.
Yes.
Right.
As you give people access, you slowly begin to open up their ability to touch your emotions.
Right.
Right,
That's
right.
Because the closer someone gets to you, the more power they have to affect your emotions,
Right.
good or bad.
Absolutely.
But that's an access that what you're seeing nowadays is everybody's getting that access.
Right.
Everybody has a key
Right.
to your emotions. From the
Yeah.
person on the bus stop to the school teacher, whatever, anyone can emotionally impact me.
Yeah.
That's not how it should be.
Absolutely.
And that's not healthy either.
Not
But
at
you're
all.
absolutely right, especially, and I don't want to harp on it like it's negative, but with the social platforms, you have instances where people will take the word of a stranger on some video than
Right.
somebody who knows them and who actually has their best
Right.
interests at heart over that. I can
That's
remember
true.
times I was talking to my niece about, maybe not nothing major, but Satan something, and then they'll look it up as I'm saying it. Well, Google said, I said, well, ask
Right.
Google next time.
But here's a
Right.
question for you. Here's a question for
Right.
you.
That's
Is the
true.
church fostering emotional fragility? And here's what I mean by that. Are we as church people so in tune with soothing and comforting and providing comfort and acknowledging and confirming emotions without ever questioning whether or not this emotion it's real because you have it, but is it legitimate? Should you have it?
that's
Or is it,
good.
even if it's legitimate, is it doing you any favors? Because sometimes your
Yeah.
anger with me can be legitimate.
Right.
But is your anger with me actually going to help you?
Right.
Is it going to help me? Right. So is the church fostering emotional, fragile people by creating a culture and atmosphere where nothing that is challenging or nothing that pushes back can be said for the fear of one,
hurting feelings.
hurting feelings. Then whoever that person is, and I'm not just talking about the pastor, whatever situation, the wrath of the enablers will jump on. How could you say that?
Right,
How
right.
that's so mean. That's how could you say that to them? Or you're supposed to come and comfort and wipe the tears away. And you have to push back. I'm not Jesus. This is not heaven. This is not the end time. There's no.
I think sometimes we confuse honesty, in a church situation, being honest with somebody, we sometimes can confuse it for having a lack of compassion.
Say that again. What do you mean? Unpack that, First Lady.
Well, let's say
Honestly, I didn't know what you were saying. No, but go ahead. No, I'm just playing, First Lady.
no, there can be times
Yes, ma'am.
where sometimes we have to give tough love. And sometimes tough love is telling somebody not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. But depending on what the situation is, depending on what is said,
Right.
on the outside or onlookers, we can sometimes confuse that, but that's not compassion.
I get what you're saying.
So that's what I'm
You
saying.
know what I look for today? Real testimonies.
Yeah.
Right.
Where people show, because what it's going to take to turn the culture of a church to a place where people are emotionally healthy and not fragile, which would increase and maximize their happiness more than any blessing pay
Yeah.
raise could ever
Yeah.
do, is that those who are emotionally healthy would talk and explain how they dealt with certain issues,
Yeah.
how they saw it, how they process it. For example, something happened at the job, and this is how I dealt with it. This was my thinking. This is how I left it. And it wasn't simply all the spiritual or the talk of, I gave it over to the Lord. I laid my burden at his feet. No, that's good. I'm not discounting that.
Yeah,
I know what
yeah.
you're saying.
But people need to learn how
Right.
you, as First Lady Marie Battle, you as an emotionally mature, healthy person, when someone said, I don't know if this is true or not, someone said that you're dealing with a sickness. Is that true?
Well,
Huh?
I have a condition.
Okay, you have a condition. So someone with a condition who has undoubtedly received a lot of confused comments, a lot
Yes.
of tough and challenging days being sick, right? A lot of whatever it is. How could you be sick and still maintain a state of emotional, not just happy, but an optimistic
Right.
viewpoint in life? These are the things people need to be taught. These are the things people need to be walked through, because it's through that I'm able to learn this is how I do stuff. And so we're past the point of do as I say. We're in the point, watch me do as I do.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will, through watching me live my life and how I handle your problems, that will do it. But one of the issues is those who are living well, for the sake of, I don't know what it is, but sometimes with the transparency, we don't want to share that because we feel as though maybe it's giving too much, or we don't want to be that transparent. I don't know.
I
What
would
are your
say
thoughts?
that's not our issue in this church, because we have been the saints in general.
I'm just speaking generally.
Yeah, I think in this church we're very fortunate, because for the most part, when the saints in House of Deliverance share their testimony, you get the unedited version of that testimony, and it does help people. I think of that one. I think it was on Good Friday one year. Was that
Oh,
Good
right.
Friday, when
I
people
think
really
it was
shared?
Watch Night or Good Friday. one
Yeah,
of
and
those.
people really shared their testimonies and who they were and what God delivered them from. And then when we came off of our 24-hour fast, the testimonies that went forth, even our dear sister Evangelist Courtney shared a powerful testimony. And most of the times people receive those and come up and tell you how that has helped
Right.
them. So I don't think that's a huge issue in this church.
Let me ask you this question then. One of the and tell me what you both think of this.
Okay.
One of the therapists suggests to do this. Write down how many hours a day you're experiencing a negative emotion. It could be sadness, it could be guilt, shame, loneliness, whatever it is. Write that down, how many times a day or how out of an hour. Check if that's where you were.
Okay.
They say that if over the course of a week, and this is, mind you, if no one has died, you haven't had fired or
Right.
job loss, that if half or more of those hours are spent in the grips of a negative emotion, then you are an emotionally fragile person. Because no one's life
Right.
should be
Right.
that bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very good way of
Yeah.
quantifying this thing,
Yes.
meaning we have to check ourselves.
Yes.
And like David, that text, why am I feeling like this?
Yeah.
Because
Why
no
yeah.
one of us, especially if we're saved,
Yeah.
should be walking around with more than half of our waking hours spent affected by negative emotions.
I
Yeah.
agree.
That's unacceptable.
I agree.
That's unhealthy and unacceptable. Wouldn't you
Right.
agree?
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. And to the point where you were saying, how can you be dealing with sickness or a situation and still have joy? One thing that really helps me is because I'm going through something, I'm not defined by that thing. I'm defined by what God sees about me, and not that just God sees it, but I accept it and
Right.
see it for myself as well.
Right.
So it's compartmentalizing. Okay, I may be sick, but my mind is not sick. My heart is not sick.
Right.
It's just in my body, my physical body, something beyond my control. That's how I compartmentalize it. And then to the question on, is the church following it? I would say it's the fragile people within the church that fosters an atmosphere that they're comfortable with.
That's good.
And what has to happen is, and this is just the church at large, is there have to be strong leadership that's going to lead the people of God where they need to
That's
be.
a good point.
And
Kind of like Moses
yeah,
leading them out of Egypt.
You got to
Yeah.
come out of this.
That's so true.
You've been here for this many years, but you have to remember
have
what
to
your
come out of it,
heritage
right.
is. You have to remember what you're a part of. The bloodline you're connected to is not a weak bloodline.
Right.
It's not a easy to overcome. Like, it's a strong, beautiful, and we have to be reminded of those things, because so many times in the Old Testament, it constantly says, remember this,
Yes.
mark this, share it with this
Right.
generation, then the next generation. Those types of things, to remember the victories that we've had and what God has already done
Right.
for us, but to remember who we are to God and in God. So I think it's more that than getting so stuck in the temporal. Right
Yes.
now, this is what I'm feeling, so this is what I am.
Let me ask you this question: Do we magnify and overemphasize tests and trials?
Yes,
Meaning, okay, this is very fast.
absolutely.
Talking about in terms of test, trial versus praise report, deliverance, and that's a challenging mindset. If we think more in terms of what have I been delivered from,
Yeah.
what are my praise reports, that is going to control your emotions.
Yes.
As opposed to thinking about waking up, thinking about a trial,
Yeah.
thinking
Right.
about a tribulation, think about the negative or the things that I'm going through that I wish were different.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, listen, this is not well, this is not good, but here are my deliverances. This is what God has done. This is what God is
Going
doing.
back to what I was saying about counting my blessings, how we make it through those things by focusing on the positive
Right.
and counting your blessings.
Right. Well, and that's true too. But I guess I'm thinking in terms like a blessing is a thing that God gave me, or something that
Waking me up this morning, and for me, the day that when I wake up, and I have days when I have, hand strength or whatever, that's a blessing.
Right.
So I'm not looking at something as something tangible
I got you.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Or having peace, that's a
Right.
blessing.
Yeah.
Having joy, that's a blessing, because so many people don't have that.
yeah.
That's true. And just to piggyback on that, I can remember times being younger in church, and people would say, I thank God for a reasonable portion of health and strength
Right.
or activity in my limbs.
Yes.
And I used to just think it was just a saying. I know they meant, they
Right.
were
As you get
sincere,
older, you
Right.
start
but
to realize that.
When
Yeah.
I was laid on my back and couldn't move my limbs,
Exactly.
then I was like, Jesus, I thank you for the times I
Yes.
could.
Right.
And I didn't really appreciate it, because sometimes you have something and you don't
You
appreciate,
don't appreciate it,
You,
yeah.
you know,
Take
you
it for
don't,
granted.
whatever.
This
So yeah.
this is something that's I've kind of learned in life, and it took me a minute to learn, is that good things will happen to good and happy people. And meaning that folks, let's say on a job situation, and they're looking to promote someone. I've been a manager, at secular jobs or whatever. Let's say you're dealing with a discount or whatever, anything, or even a dating situation. People are attracted to people who are happy, well-adjusted, and good things happen to those people.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
Now that
whereas
you break it down, that's true.
it does.
Nobody
Good
looking
things.
for no work.
No, nobody's looking
No.
to doing so. Sometimes we don't understand, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Prophecy, absolutely.
If I wake up negative,
Yeah.
then the encounters that I have, and watch this, the people that I'm going to draw,
That's true.
are going to be
Yeah.
negative people. If
totally
I come
agree
in
with
on the job and my facial expression, my attitude is I'm disgruntled, then everyone else on that job who is disgruntled are going to come and seek me out because they're
Yeah.
getting them disgruntled
That's
vibes
true.
off me,
That's
right?
true.
That's true.
And meanwhile, the boss is going to be in his office. Look at all them disgruntled folks sitting.
Yeah.
Now, you may not be disgruntled but because of new
yeah.
memo. You may be disgruntled because of your kid or the
Right.
the shopping incident at Walmart.
But disgruntled
But
nonetheless.
disgruntled nonetheless.
Uh-huh.
And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's a cycle that we can't break out of because we're attracting more of that negativity that then makes us more negative.
Yeah.
And we look at other people and wonder why they're being blessed and this and that. And it may not be a difference in lifestyle. It may simply be a difference of deportment.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, the cheerful countenance, the
Yes.
healthy countenance, the
Yes.
healthy whatever.
Yes.
Those are the people that are going to get blessed. And
Right.
I'm not talking about blessed from God necessarily all the time. I mean
Right.
blessed from other people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
to get reward, to get benefits, to get, you know, if you walk into some place, and here's an experiment. Try this. When you walk into some place, and you two are typically joyful, happy people, but if you walk into some place and you're just beaming, you're bright, you're whatever, that's going to attract.
What I was doing that day when I had on that coral dress, and I say everybody was speaking to me, and I was speaking to everybody. It made me feel just bright and cheerful, and I guess I was exuding that, and I attracted that.
For
Nice
one
people.
day, it
I'm
happened.
just saying that particular day, that's an example that I
one
was-
day, just one day.
No.
One day she was bright.
No,
but no, it's a
that's
good
not
point,
true.
First Lady.
That's not true.
Yeah, that's a good point. But let me ask you this. This is another good point, because I think, and I'm joking, but I think that raised a good point. Back in the day, people, our forefathers, they would go out of their house looking their
Yes.
best.
Absolutely.
Yes.
They wouldn't go out the house. They would.
Looking any kind of way.
Yeah, it was a
No.
whole presentation.
It was.
And I'm not talking about the expensive stuff.
It
just
was
looking
not
their
expensive,
best,
right?
They look
Yeah.
their best.
So,
Absolutely.
in terms of just the whole leaving the house and feeling good,
Yeah.
looking good, smelling good, you know, just having that good public persona,
Yes.
and then having people deal with you rightly, it can change your mind. Versus if I just throw on a hoodie. And I don't mean like that. 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 Let's say, okay, let's say I don't mean like that. If
I know what
you know
mean.
what I'm saying.
I know what you mean.
And I didn't comb my hair, or
Yeah.
I have a frowned expression, or
Right.
whatnot, then that's the type of folks and the experiences that are gonna be drawn to me.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I agree with that.
now, you know, depressed people attract demons of depression, and that's
Yeah.
just that's
That's
a
the truth.
fact.
That's
Yeah.
the truth.
You know, and there it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I'd wholeheartedly agree with that. And a lot of times people say, or in today's culture, I would say it's, well, I'm not going to fake the front, or I'm not going
Keep it
to
real,
act
yeah.
like I'm somewhere that I'm not. But why does everybody have to know what's going on with you
Right.
internally? And then when somebody hit their nerve, because you're open, you leave yourself vulnerable because it's written all over your face. And so somebody says the wrong thing, and now you then flew off the rails, and you feel like everything is unjust, and this happened and that happened, and I ran out of milk, and and then it's just all this stuff at one
Right.
time, and it's really, it could have been dealt with differently if we just present ourselves a different way.
Absolutely. And which goes back even how we talk, our communication
Yes.
skills, how we speak about things. And like you said, some people, I don't have to change
Right.
for anything. And that's true. But you also have to live with the repercussion,
And
consequence
what
of
you
that.
do.
That's
I can say everything that's on my mind to you and live like that, but then I have to bear the consequences.
Yeah.
If everyone I talk to, I always say what's ever on my mind, I always, whatever, Then when I throw a birthday party,
Don't expect nobody to show
shows
up.
up. Then I can't be mad at everybody.
That's
You
right.
kept it real too much. You spend a little bit too much time keeping it real.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
So we have a great deal of power over
Yes.
what our environment, our life. And this is something people in the world sometimes understand better than
Yeah.
the saints, because all they have is the natural.
Right.
Where sometimes we
Yeah.
as saints, I was this TikTok preacher that I shared with First Lady. This dude he was talking about, what was he talking about?
He was,
He was just talking about, he was going all
He
in.
was going all in.
You know,
He was talking about, sin and stuff.
Yeah,
and
sin
talking
and right.
The way you had to, but it's just the way he was doing it, his presentation and everything.
It was
just like, it's like, okay,
And it was funny because there's sometimes in when we're being right, or there's a way to be right.
That's true.
There's a way to be truthful.
That's true.
And you said in something, emotional intelligence. I think if we have more emotional intelligence,
Yes.
then that's going to create quality of life. So
Yeah.
we need to have a meeting with ourselves in these encounters. Is this worth it? Is this
Yeah.
engagement worth it? I know I can do it, but is it expedient?
Yeah.
Is it good for my overall satisfaction for this day? Should I have this conversation? Should I say this like this? Should I stand up and fight this principle, or just
Right.
let this slide? Because not every battle is worth fighting.
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that comes with maturity, not just emotional maturity, but just maturity. Because if you fight every battle, you're not gonna be balanced. It's gonna
You
always
got
be
Eric
another
battle, you got Jesse battle, you got Denise battle, you got
See what I
Marie
mean? It's
battle.
gonna
You
always
cannot
be
fight
a
every battle. That's right.
But it's gonna always be something,
Right.
You really have to be intentional
Absolutely.
about what you allow to take up space in your life
Absolutely.
in any capacity.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I think the takeaway here is that everyone has the right to be as emotionally fragile as
true.
they want to be. Everyone has the right to be as unhappy as they want to be. Everyone has the right to be toxic. That is we have free will.
Right.
But at some point, people of God, and starting with me, we have to make a decision. Do we exercise these rights and then live with the consequences, or do we make up our mind to say, listen, I do want a better life. I do want my food to taste better. I do want my blood pressure to go down.
Yes,
I
Lord.
do want to be able to wake up and enjoy the blessings that I have.
Right.
And so in order to do that, I need to change how not outside of me, but inside of me to fit with these blessings that are
Right.
coming. Because how can God pour blessings into an unhappy person?
Right.
You just contaminate it.
Right.
So people have the right to do that, but the question is, what are you going to do? How are you going to choose to live?
Yeah.
Agree, First Lady?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
That's beautiful.
So any last comments? Any praise reports? Any good things that have happened in your life?
So many, Pastor. I don't even know where to start.
Start, right?
So
No, I'm serious. It's so
That's
many good
right.
things. Prayers have been getting answered,
Yes.
so I'm just appreciative for what God is doing, and not just material things, but in the lives of the people that I'm praying for and in my own life.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful.
I'm happy that as we do this, there are 5 saints who are part of the Pole to Promise ministry,
Amen.
who have gone out into strip clubs to share God's great gospel.
Amen.
That is
Amen. That's such a
exciting.
blessing.
It's a blessing. I'm
Absolutely.
looking forward to hearing from Rita East
Yeah.
to see how things
How it
went. And it's just beautiful.
It is.
And it just goes to show you, the Lord gave you a vision for that ministry over a year or so ago. And you initially approached Rita about that ministry. And I guess she was a little bit resistant.
It's scary. I admit,
Yeah, it's
it's scary. It's a scary
And
ministry.
so it took her a minute.
Intimidating.
And here we are over a year later.
Yeah.
And she's approached about that. And then she came to you again with it. And you're like, that's what I
And
approached
isn't
her
it
about.
surprising the folks that went out with her?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes,
that's we have young people having the system. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
and it's not for everyone because you have
True.
to decide. I mean,
True.
that's a ministry you have to feel God is leading
Right.
you
Absolutely.
to participate
Made
in.
it clear, it is not
Yeah.
a ministry for the men of the church. This is the
It's
women
not
going
well
out
if
to
a man can go to a male strip club and minister there.
but to the
The
to
female
women.
strip club,
It's
that's
the
right.
female going out talking to the women.
So
Yeah.
it's a very good. That's
It's
very
a beautiful
exciting.
season.
Yes,
It's a
ma'am.
wonderful season.
Well, what do you gonna eat when you get home there, Court?
Fish.
Fish. That's what Rita ate.
I know.
Oh, good.
Got some too.
First lady, what are you gonna eat?
I don't know.
Stop. I'm gonna get her some Cane's. A Caniac
She don't want
combo.
that. I don't
She
want
does
just the
want
lemonade.
it. She does
Oh, that's
want
what
it.
She said last time,
I
just
want
the
it. I've
lemonade.
been craving it because I've been sending a lot of commercials.
Oh,
See,
but
she
I
wants
have
it.
had, but I won't get the chicken. I have gotten the French fries and the lemonade.
No,
so
the
that's
last
why
time I went, they gave me chicken nuggets, and I thought they're supposed to have tenders. I'm
That's
not going.
crazy.
they got nuggets now.
That's what mine was.
I do miss certain. I do miss. I do miss Cane's. I do miss. I miss eating chicken. I wish they would get some catfish nuggets at Cane's. That would be a good idea.
Well, we have descended into Caniac combo. I may stop and get
Caniac.
you. You like fried pickles from
I do like fried
Lee's?
pickles.
no from Sonic's.
Yeah,
Oh, I
theirs
didn't
are
know
pretty
Sonic's
good.
had
Lee's
Lee's
are
are
good,
good
but
too.
Sonic's
They
are
never had
good.
Lee's. I went to
They
Lee's
never
one
have
night.
it.
Now I think they did have it. They just didn't
They
feel like
just didn't
making
want
it.
to-
They
That's
didn't
what
wanna make
we're
it.
all out.
Yeah.
Like, you gave one of them Willis looks. Come on now, y'all ain't
Yeah.
out. That's another micro decision. Do I fight this
I
man at this
know.
drive-through, or
That's
do I just
true.
accept what he said and leave without any fried
Right,
pickles?
right. That's true.
That's right.
Decisions.
Well, people of God, we hope that you've had a beautiful Friday night. We hope
Amen.
that tomorrow, which is Saturday, all of your wildest dreams come true. We hope that you have a phenomenal day on Sunday. We hope that your life better and not worse. And please meditate and think about some of the stuff we discussed here.
Amen.
Be an
Amen.
emotionally strong person. Make up your
Yes.
mind tonight
Yeah.
that I am going to walk in joy and happiness regardless of who or what is around me. Doesn't that sound good?
Yes.
sir.
All right. Enjoy yourself. Get some canes and see you all on Sunday.